And away we go. It's the DFS Alert presented by Osmo.com, brought to you in part by Superdraft.io. We'll talk about them momentarily. Dan Strafford, Dave Lockren along with you on this Friday morning, getting you ready for a 7-game. Yes, 7 games. 7 games, Lofty.
You got it. You had it right.
I was trying to make a joke that didn't make any sense. But anyway.
None of them do, Dan.
That's welcome to my wife's world. 7 games on this NBA slate. We're going to go through position by position. How the hell are you, Mr. Lockren?
Not bad, man. Not bad. I mentioned to you before the show, DraftKings Sportsbook is like giving away free money.
Yep.
And you can't make, like, on the bets where they give you really good odds, you can't bet a lot on it. You know, you have $50 limits on it, but why not? If they're going to give it away, make the bet. And they had one that was Embiid and Harris total points. You had to take the yes. Will they score more points than Trae Young, right? Minus 500. DK did an odds boost to minus 110. And my buddy texted me. He's like, this has to be a lock, right? I said, don't be so sure when it comes to this team. But it's still the best bet. You know, you're still at minus 110. You have to take. Like, Embiid had a points prop of 24.5. And Harris was at like Harris was at 24. Harris was at 19. So, or 18. So, and Young was at 28. So when you just look at that, like, you have to just do it. You get $50 max on it, which is pretty fun. And it came down to the point where at halftime, Young had 29, Embiid and Harris had a combined 20. Like, it was an actual sweat. They pulled it off at the end, but Embiid didn't look good. I'll say this much, though. Ben Simmons, defense, free throw shooting, I think he was 9 for 10 at the line today, Dan. Pretty impressive.
Hey, baby steps, right? That's what it's all about.
Listen, he's a very good player. If he could, I know I say it all the time, and I'm pretty critical of him at times, but if this guy could shoot even a little bit, he would be dominant. I mean, he had 31 points today on I forget what his shooting was, 10 for 15, 11 for 13 from the stripe. So he's getting defensively, locked Trae Young down in the second half. He wasn't on him for the entirety of the first half. Not saying he wasn't on him at all, but not as much as he should be. But they lost again, and you know what that means? Josh Engelman, very soon, going to be rocking that porn stash when the Sixers go under 500 on the road. It's very much a win-win for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, you make – and I know people in the past have accused you of homerism. You're almost the anti-homer when it comes to the 76ers. You strategically bet and use your fandom to understand when to be against your own teams.
I assuage my own pain, man. And the way I do that is by saying if they win and go above 500, it's awesome because I'm a Sixers fan. If they don't, I get to watch him look like a jerk off for a week with a mustache.
I shaved this morning and left the stash and walked into my daughter's room, my 2-year-old youngest, and she goes, "No, Daddy." That's fair. That's fair.
Well, you know what? When I have kids, that's exactly what I want them to see whenever I see somebody, whenever they see someone with a mustache walk into their room.
Or anyone who uses the word daddy, just no.
Listen, here's the thing. At what age should you no longer be allowed to say dad? If you're a girl, fine.
No, if you're a boy or girl, if you're talking to your dad, fine. I don't care. If you're an adult referring to someone else, you don't use that word.
Well, hold on. What if you're like a 30-year-old calling him dad?
Fine.
That might be a Southern thing too, though. So
yeah,
I can't.
Like, who knows?
Well, no, I'm saying around where I'm from, nobody calls their dad.
Oh, sure. No,
like in the Northeast.
Yeah,
nobody. At least no one that I've ever met.
Pops.
But I
dad,
think,
yeah, sure.
I think down south they do.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you call another grown man that has no biological relation to you, you call him daddy? No, thank you. Someone did that to you.
There's some cash being exchanged in that instance, but nonetheless. Nonetheless, we have 7 games.
That's good
for the National Basketball Association, and hey, good for you. 7 games here to talk about. Giannis and Luka. Luka's out. Doncic turning his ankle in practice on Thursday. Last I read is not traveling with the team, So he will not be with them in Houston. Obviously, not too far to travel. Distance in Texas is large enough, but they are not changing time zones or anything. But Doncic will not be with the team. You have Giannis still dealing with this shoulder issue. I think he's truly questionable heading into Friday. Anthony Davis also listed as questionable, still dealing with the bruised butt, the gluteus maximus contusion, which is the greatest injury of all time.
That is something, isn't
Just
it?
because I get to read that every time out. Don't see a ton of other injuries, Lofty. I don't know if you see anything that jumps off the page at you. I know Jaren Jackson Jr. is out because of that one-game suspension. Not sure if he's going to appeal that or not. Jamal Murray, I believe, is still out. Any injuries for you that pop off the page before we get going here, position by position?
Yeah, we don't have confirmation on Murray, but back to back, I'm going to go ahead and assume that he doesn't play. Everyone on Chicago has a injury designation, like every single day. It's really getting ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, I'm serious. Sotorodsky, Chris Dunn, Zach LaVine, Valentin, Arcidiacono, Luke Cornett. Daniel Gafford's now questionable. It's crazy. And not to mention the guys that are actually hurt. But now outside of that, I think you're right. The Luka Doncic is the biggest thing, right? And then Tim Hardaway is also questionable. So you could see a big shakeup in that backcourt. Very possible that you end up getting, I don't know, DeLon Wright and Seth Curry both starting. I know we've been seeing Seth Curry start, but you might see him. One of these guys started. Maybe Jalen Brunson started the point.
Yeah.
Maybe Rick Carlisle goes crazy and starts Barea. You really have no idea what Carlisle's going to do. He's so difficult to predict. But that's the biggest news. And look, it may not seem big, but that Hardaway news is huge too, because you could very easily be taking 65 minutes out of that backcourt, right? So we'll pay close attention there. I think, did you mention Giannis?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Giannis questionable. And then Carmelo Anthony is away from the team. You see that?
I saw you had the Q tag. I didn't know why.
So he's away from the team. He hasn't been officially ruled out though. So I don't know what it is. That's worth paying attention to because he's been playing a lot of minutes. You mentioned Jaren Jackson, and you mentioned Anthony Davis. So I think that's it. And Marc Gasol playing the second of a back-to-back. I'm going to assume with that hammy, he's probably going to sit both of these games.
I wonder if that's Kobe related with Carmelo?
Dude, I wondered the exact same thing when I saw that. How close were they?
I mean, they've both been USA teams. Like,
Melo's been in a league for a minute.
Yeah. So I mean, I have no obvious knowledge. I have no team sources like some other DFS analysts out there in the world. But it wouldn't surprise me if Melo, who had stepped away from the game, had seen sort of life after the NBA, has rejoined the NBA, playing on the West Coast. It hits him fairly hard. It wouldn't surprise me if that was part of why he was away and maybe just sort of taking stock and figuring out exactly what he wanted to do moving forward. But we'll wait and see. We'll have to see.
I got something here. First of all, Carmelo Anthony had an Instagram post. I remember reading that. It was really sad. He said, "This pain's almost unbearable, champ. Why you? Why Gigi?" There's so much more. It's terrible. We won't rehash it. But we do have something from clutchpoints.com. It says, though Anthony's status for Blazers game, by the way, against the Lakers, matter of fact, maybe that just makes it worse. We're just obviously speculating. It might not be a surprise if he does not play. And then it says Carmelo Anthony was good friends with Kobe Bryant, who tragically died as the result of a helicopter crash on Sunday morning in Calabasas. He sent out a heartfelt Instagram post in the wake of his passing. So and I've seen two articles here tying it to that, but no one actually knows.
There's no quote or direct reference to Carmelo. And I'm going to say now, we're probably going to talk about the Lakers, obviously, and LeBron and AD, and this is their first game since that tragedy. And if you want to sort of quantify what that means, bless your soul and enjoy it. But I have no way of doing that. I have no way of understanding if LeBron's going to take 40 shots in honor of Kobe Bryant. And this is strictly from a DFS
Kyrie was.
Exactly.
And he ended up having 36 fantasy points.
Yeah, and they won, and the
Yeah.
Nets won, and Dinwiddie had a good game, and Kyrie had an awesome post game interview where he talked about Kobe, and so I want to temper everyone's sort of narrative street expectations for any single game. Yes, it could happen, but don't let that really cloud your judgment when it comes to lineup building. Strictly talking about DFS. If you want to talk about watching the NBA and enjoying the fact that some of these players are having a cathartic experience by being out there and playing for Kobe, absolutely. But when it comes to DFS, temper on the side of expectation that all of a sudden shots are going to be falling because of X expectation.
Right. And look, I mean, there's no question that it could be a perfect storm.
Yep.
If Anthony Davis ends up sitting out, the line in this game gets a little bit tighter. It's at the Staples Center, the first game they've played since Kobe passed. I'm not a narrative guy, and I'm with you, by the way. I agree that you want to at least temper expectations, but there's no doubt that in the back of my head, in the front of my head, I'm saying I wouldn't be at all surprised if LeBron went out there and dropped an insane amount of points and rebounds and assists and blocks and steals. This game has a 231.5 total. I will say this much though. Lakers are 12-point favorites.
Yep.
Leads you to believe that Davis probably plays. At least that's what the line looks like now.
Yep. Yeah. So let's dive in at point guard and we'll make our way through. Maybe we save Harden for shooting guard or cross section here because Doncic is out. He was our most expensive point guard on this slate. He was our second most expensive player on this slate. Harden is 10-6, Westbrook 10-5, LeBron point guard, small forward eligible. Maybe we save him for small forward. But let's take the top end of point guard prices. Feel slightly inflated, so we'll take that into consideration as we go through on DK. We'll talk about superdraft.io momentarily. But what do you got here, Lofty? Looking at the top end, Westbrook, Harden against Dallas without Doncic, Irving against Chicago, Lillard gets that Lakers matchup. Then you get Rose, Dinwiddie, and the rest in the mid-tier. Anybody stand out to you as somebody that at first glance here, first look on this slate, you think is worthwhile to talk about?
Yeah, so first of all, I love this week of games where we had like 6, 9, 6, 6, 7. You and I always talk about it. That's like the perfect amount of games. It's kind of.
And apparently Adam never listened to us podcast because he was waxing poetical about how great it was that these game numbers
When
were
was
there.
this?
Well, on the podcast this morning, on Thursday morning, yesterday morning, I should say.
With you or with?
Yeah, with me.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, this is great. I was like, yeah, if you ever listen to Lofty and I, he's like, oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, we've been saying it since 2013.
Exactly.
On this podcast. Anyway, rebranded, of course. So I had said the other day on the deeper dive that, and I guess it's kind of a hot take and things will swing back in Harden's favor. But the argument I made was, first of all, do I think that if Harden and Westbrook are the same price, you're still leaning Harden? Of course. But the disparity now is so much less than it was early in the season. Consider this. Over the last month, James Harden and Russell Westbrook, their usage and pretty much everything. Well, okay. So since the start of January, James Harden has a 35% usage rate, 31% assist rate, 10% rebound rate, 1.48 fantasy points per minute. Westbrook, 37% usage rate, check. 41% assist rate, check. 12% rebound rate, check, and 1.65 fantasy points per minute, check. So I know that at the end of the season, we'd all be surprised if James Harden didn't, average more points and more fantasy points than Westbrook, right? But Westbrook, from a usage standpoint, from a minutes standpoint, recently has been seeing as much, if not more, than James Harden. And I think that's definitely something we have to consider because, I think we all fall victim to, hey, if Harden's the same price, you have to go with him. You don't really want to land on any Westbrook. Westbrook's been an absolute monster lately. And, teams might be playing James Harden differently and giving Westbrook more. I don't know. But he's attempted 20 plus field goals in like every game this month, 25 plus in most of them. He's just putting up ridiculous numbers right now, Dan. While James Harden last time out, 18 points, 12 points, 27, 29, 13, 34. It's kind of strange if you ask me. And his usage is definitely down. The last 3 games, he's averaging 15 field goal attempts per game. I won't go much deeper into it, but I think you get what I'm saying here. Russell Westbrook, if he's going to come in at a fraction of Harden's ownership just because James Harden, is similarly priced,
Yep.
I'm going to have a lot of Harden, but there's no question that I'm going to want some Westbrook too, because, it's like you always want to catch the wave as it's developing. I don't know what surfer terms used, right? Brewing. What do they say?
Sure.
You know what I mean? You don't want to hop on.
Developing seems right.
Yeah, whatever. You don't want to hop on while it's crashing onto your head, right? But it feels like we know that Russell Westbrook is the type of guy that has done this so much in the past and can continue to do it. So it's not like, oh, this hot streak for Westbrook's going to come to an end. He's the type of guy that can go out there and rack up, 60 plus fantasy points any given night.
As they swell.
Thank my man. That's it. I knew I could trust you. That's a great memory you have.
That's why we're here. Or Google. Definitely. I mean, that's fine.
I know, obviously. But no, I like Westbrook. I mean, Harden, we can talk about him here. Both of these guys, because the prices are really nice. But you have to wonder if something strange is happening with him. I'm not going to look into it too much, obviously. But just, keep it in mind. He did play 38 minutes. That's great. But the difference now is that Westbrook played 42 in regulation, right? So Westbrook's getting as many, if not more minutes, more shots recently. And he's a better facilitator, which he hasn't needed to do because he's scoring so much. So I still do like Westbrook here. We'll talk LeBron at small forward, like you said. I think so. The Blazers are big dogs here, double-digit dogs at the Staples Center. It's crazy to think that that the Lakers don't just mop up here, or blow the doors off the Blazers. But it's a 231.5 total. I think Lillard's a bit too expensive here. I get it. He's been playing phenomenal basketball. And this is kind of one of those rock and the hard place things, because if you're just looking at recent production, how do you not play Lillard over Harden or even Westbrook? McCollum comes back and Lillard still goes off for a 36, 10, 11 triple-double. Honestly, maybe I'm wrong. This is my first time really trying to soak everything in on this slate. Maybe you do just keep running Lillard out there, because what he's doing right now, even since McCollum returned, is some insane shit. He's playing almost 40 minutes per game as well. It's a tough matchup, but none of that has seemed to matter lately.
All right, how about we get into the mid-tier here? Well, their point guard typically has a ton of options, but you get into the likes of Lillard, Booker, Irving. You talked there in the 9K price point range. Derrick Rose, Dinwiddie, Van Vliet. And then you get into point guard only on DK, which doesn't happen a ton, but it's Lowry, Bledsoe, Lonzo Ball, John Morant, and Chris Paul. That goes from 72 to 68, a tight window there of potential plays. Any one of those 5 stand out to you? And obviously anybody else you want to talk about, but Lowry, Bledsoe, Ball, Morant, and Paul in the mid-tier.
Not Lowry, Bledsoe, Ball,
John Morant, and Chris Paul against Phoenix.
I think Paul at 6,800 is decent. I don't see myself getting to Lowry here. There's a ton of mouths to feed. I think he should be, this like 67, 6,800, honestly. Dinwiddie's price is still up. I know he's coming off a strong game, but you don't want to pay that much for him. Derrick Rose, very tough matchup. I think this game is over before it starts right now. Toronto. Wow. What do you think the spread on this game is?
The Toronto
without
versus,
looking,
what is that? Toronto, Detroit?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I will say, and I looked away. I will say Toronto -9.
-4.5.
Oh wow.
I mean, I don't know. It is in Detroit, but that still seems a little bit strange to me, even with Gasol out, right? I don't know. That seems odd. I like John Morant at sub 7K. He put a wicked move on Taj Gibson. I get it, Taj Gibson, but it was still filthy. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not.
Yeah, he's solid. In a close game, you probably get 32 minutes from him. I have no issues there. Probably my favorite mid-range guy. I don't hate McCollum either. His price keeps dropping as well. And then Ricky Rubio, man, the Thunder have played really good defense, particularly in the backcourt. But Rubio has dropped below 6K. It's a matter of whether you think you're going to see some type of resurgence from him, because that price tag is really low. And by the way, I think some of that correlates with Devin Booker also just playing better and being a lot more aggressive, both as a facilitator and getting up consistently more shots and taking the ball out of Rubio's hands. So that is something to worry about. As far as value goes, though, we talked about this Doncic thing. Assuming we don't know I don't think we know who's going to get the start. I know Doncic has missed some games, but like I said, Carlisle's a really tough guy to decipher what he's going to do. Last time Brunson started, played 34 minutes. Hardaway also played. So, if you're getting 34 minutes or 30 plus minutes from Brunson, he's going to be a phenomenal play. Even, 30 minutes from him. He started 24 minutes. So Doncic missed four straight games. So the most recent one, he played 34, then 24 before that. Then he played 31 before that. And then here's the last one, Dan. Kind of important stuff, though. Then Brunson played 32. So 31 plus minutes in 3 of the 4. Give him 30 minutes here, I'd say. And that becomes a pretty solid play. Rajon Rondo is always somewhat viable in tournaments if you hope maybe he gets 24 minutes, but very risky. I think that's where I'm at on value right now.
I will throw out Reggie Jackson as somebody I'm keeping track of for Friday's slate.
Sure.
Playing mid-20s.
Great, man.
I think there's upside, sub 5K, playing on and off with Derrick Rose, which I like to see. They're not just strictly platooning the two guys, and I think that gives Jackson some ability to get on the floor and facilitate, but also play off ball a little bit. So at 4,800, Reggie Jackson, I know Toronto's not the best matchup, but still cheap enough, I think, and probably low owned on this slate to keep an eye on. We're recording Thursday night. I think everyone's well aware of that at this point in the stage in the game. Interesting that Kawhi Leonard not on the floor to start the game for the Clippers. So every indication was he would play. Every indication was that he would start. He is not on the bench. He was not on the floor. As the Clippers started, getting messages, reading through Twitter to see what might be happening, but no indication as we record right now.
So we just got an alert. Kawhi Leonard questionable to play.
Back tightness.
Wow. You know what, though? I mean, is Mo Harkless really that big of a drop-off? I'd say lateral move.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would say, too. Let's move on to shooting guard next. Mo Harkless's hand size, just not the same. Let's talk.
Imagine being Clippers fan. Imagine being Clippers fans there, and you show up. You want to watch Kawhi Leonard, and you get Mo Harkless. At least Paul George is playing. Imagine if he was still out. That would suck.
Well, his hammy might tighten up real soon if Kawhi's not out there.
Yeah. They might just get a glimpse of him.
Exactly. Was that Paul George? Nope, it wasn't. Shooting guard.
It might have been.
We have Levine as your only sort of shooting guard eligible only player at the top end. You get Brooks and Seth Curry as we get down to the cheap end. It's a pretty steep drop off from the top end to the mid tier when it comes to price points. But you have Levine, Booker, Drew Holiday, Derrick Rose, Dinwiddie, all the same sort of cast of characters we've talked about already at point guard. Anybody that you want to highlight specifically here at shooting guard? Dylan Brooks has been playing really well to start 2020. He's put up multiple 30-plus DK point outings. He's now up to 6K, though. Was 5,755, 6K, 62, I guess, back down to 6K, I should say. Is Brooks someone on your radar here against New Orleans?
I think the price is a little bit rich. I do think, though, that this game should feature a ton of scoring, so I don't hate it. But I think we're also going to have some pretty decent value and mid-range options. Looking at it now, let me just see here. Because I have Brooks as a decent play, but nothing special. If he was if he was back where he was like a few games ago at 5,500, that'd be a lot more appealing. I know it's only $500, but once you hit 6K, I think it's a little bit more difficult to get there because this guy is extremely scoring dependent, and that's kind of tough. So is Zach LaVine, but look at what he's done over the last month, right? Since the start of the new year, LaVine has a 34% usage rate, 20% assist rate, which for him will take, 9% rebound rate, 1.3 fantasy points per minute, and you've got him coming in here playing monster minutes, 39 in regulation in 2 of his last 3 games. I think LaVine, now that his price has come down, he was 9,800 a couple games ago. He's at 8,500. 8,500 is a much, much more palatable price point. And I think I can definitely get to that on Friday. At everything else at shooting guard, you and I kind of already talked about. Like, I don't know how much else there is from a value standpoint.
Right.
If Hardaway is in, that definitely becomes more appealing. Joe Harris is playing 30+ minutes and he's cheap, so there's that. He's not an enticing fantasy option really ever, but I definitely think that I think when you talk about being able to get enough minutes at a discount, assuming there's only a little bit of value because Brunson's just obvious value, but the big thing here is if Hardaway does play, then you've got a really, really interesting situation because with Doncic off the floor, he has only a 21% usage rate. But wow, this is surprising me. 0.82 fantasy points per minute. But I don't know. Forgive me if my hopes are set higher than they should be. But it is hard for me to believe that if with Doncic out, that Hardaway doesn't see some additional opportunity and play an easy 30+ minutes. Here's the problem, though. DraftKings preemptively priced him up, which is odd because they kept Brunson at 3,800. They put DeLon Wright at 5K, and they put Hardaway at 6K, which makes him much more. I said it the other day when Eric Gordon was 6,900 on DraftKings and he was getting no ownership. I said, and you, by the way, congrats on that, dude.
Oh, thanks.
What was it, $500? You came like 13th place in the 20 max $4 on a single
$4.
bullet.
Yep.
Yeah, which is awesome. You played Eric Gordon.
I did.
And the guy is like a 1.48 fantasy point per minute guy without Westbrook and Harden or Chris Paul and Harden on the floor since the start of last season. In spots like that, I'll take all of that when people are worried to pay for him. But, with Tim Hardaway, with the price coming up, I just don't think there's enough there.
I'm intrigued by why he's priced up because Doncic got injured during practice on Thursday. So it's not as if the injury happened on Wednesday in the game or Tuesday on the game and they saw it. I'd be really intrigued by what his ownership was last time out or whatever it might be. We've talked about that many times over for DraftKings, what goes into it. And to the Eric Gordon play, I didn't think of all the coaches, D'Antoni was going to play those bench players like Hardenstein and Clemens.
Mm-hmm.
Like
you were right.
It just didn't seem like
a lot of smart people. A lot of sharp people thought they would get those minutes too. So that was I
played
thing.
Gordon and House and one other Rocket, but not PJ. It might have been PJ. No, it wasn't PJ Tucker. But anyway, I just figured in that instance he's going to go short bench and play the guys that play normally, and I get the projection to say the bench guys that don't normally get played will get run, but you went short rotation and it worked out for me. So that was good for me, as it were. Small forward, we get LeBron and
Austin Rivers, right?
Austin Rivers. Yes, that's what it was. Yep. There it was. We get LeBron, and I talked about it at the top. We know the narrative and we know what can be here. I will say he's a great play, right? Like LeBron on any given slate is a great play. If AD is out, an even better play. His price point is not above 11K. It's 10-3 against Portland. We know LeBron can do amazing things here. Do you have a reason outside of narrative, Dave, to say do not play LeBron here? Is there anything about this matchup, anything about the way LeBron's been playing that says, hey, you know what, at 10-3, that price point is too high. I'm going to stay away?
No. No, I don't. I mean, I guess the only argument you'd make is like, hey, Harden and Westbrook are in the same price tier, but that's it. Like there's nothing here that I see that is concerning. And obviously if Anthony Davis is out, then it just becomes a spot where, you're wildly incompetent to not want to play or to not play LeBron. I get it. Maybe he'll be high owned, but that would just be a spot that I'd have a very difficult time getting away from, for sure. But no, I mean, Portland over the last month, let's take a little deeper dive into this. They have the 28th ranked defense over the last month. As far as pace goes, they're playing at a middle of the road, like right in the middle of the league in pace. But this game still has a 231 total. Like I said, 28th in pay or in defensive rating over the last month. It is a good matchup for LeBron on top of the Kobe narrative, on top of the high total, and a very reasonable price point. I think 10-3 is more than reasonable. Of the 10K players, well, Doncic isn't in, but let's just say Giannis, Luka, Harden, Westbrook, and LeBron. He's the cheapest of the four if you get rid of Doncic.
All right. Don't forget, we are brought to you by superdraft.io. Haven't mentioned them earlier. If you are looking for the future of daily fantasy sports, well, it's arrived. Experience Superdraft's exclusive game mode multiplier. Say goodbye to salary restrictions and hello to lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge to draft any player you want and build your very own dream team. Countless lineup possibilities let you experience daily fantasy sports the way you want. Superdraft offers contests for NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, and PGA, so you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Use that promo code AWESOMO and claim your free $20 in super cash with your first deposit of $100 or more. Download the app in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. Superdraft, no limits, more winning. As we continue on here at small forward, Chris Middleton, does his viability here at 8K hinge on Giannis being in or out?
100%. Yeah, just no doubt about it. Yes. Chris Middleton with Giannis active is still a very good basketball player. But they dropped 151 points on Washington in regulation. I mean, just absurd. But he is a very, very good basketball player still. 8K against Denver. Denver defensively, I know they haven't lived up to expectations, but that's still just not a spot that I think you need to pay for him, especially on a day, I'll say it again, where we have a lot of good mid-range talent. If Giannis ends up being out, then again, he becomes one of the top options on the slate at 8K, no question. Bledsoe played 31 minutes last game, had him and Middleton, right? Bledsoe had 60 DraftKings points. They combined for 136 fantasy points between the two of them. 76.5 for Middleton, 60 for Bledsoe. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen again because, as disappointing as Denver has been defensively, bottom 10 over the last 30 days, they're still, galaxies better than the Washington Wizards. So, it all is contingent upon Giannis being in or out, no question.
All right, where else do you see yourself going here at small forward?
There really isn't that much, dude. Like, there's not much there. I mentioned that guys like Joe Harris could be interesting, and that's only because he's cheap. Then you're getting into the question of what happens with the suspension, right? What happens with the suspension for Jaren Jackson Jr., knowing that I'm pretty sure that he just doesn't play, okay? I think appeals work differently in basketball, right? Like, I don't think you can just appeal it like in baseball and hang out for a while, can you?
I don't believe so, but I think they also have a very fast turnaround on their appeals.
Right. You might be – look, I honestly don't know the answer to that, but I do feel like you have to see who starts, who gets the minutes. The problem is none of these guys are very appealing per minute guys. Solomon Hill might play a bunch of extra minutes. Kyle Anderson probably plays some few minutes. Hill's minimum salary, Anderson's $3,800. I mean, honestly, there is not much here that stands out as anything that's all that appealing. Jay Crowder is actually decent here because he should play some extra minutes. But I mean, that's all you really have for value. There's nothing Dorian Finney-Smith is not a guy that you expect to see a whole lot of, additional opportunities with Doncic out, but he does have a 23% usage rate and 0.96 DraftKings points per minute without Doncic. You know what? I'm dumb, Dan.
What'd
I
you
was
do?
I was well, I was looking at the numbers for Doncic being out, and I forgot to do since the start of the season. I just did this last month. So Dorian Finney-Smith, 13% usage with Doncic out. Hardaway, 25% and zero point 0.9 fantasy points per minute. Still not what you're looking for, but yeah, I figure we should probably take those numbers into consideration. Jalen Brunson is 1.07 fantasy points per minute, second best on the team behind only Kristaps Porzingis.
All right. Well, yeah, Porzingis, somebody we'll talk about over at power forward momentarily. Not a ton at small forward to love. That is for certain. Obviously, for those of you playing on FanDuel, best of luck. That can always be a vast wasteland, as we used to say here in these parts. But we will continue on in trying to bring you quality content. We do that Osmo.com behind the paywall. You get projections, ownership projections. You get the lineup builder. You get the deep dive article. In front of the paywall, you get these YouTube videos. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment below on whatever you'd like to say. Typically, we appreciate positive comments, but you do you. Let's talk a little bit, though, about how else you can get into Osmo.com quickly before we roll on to Power Forward. I will say that we now have the promo codes looking at our weekly packages. So 50% off any Osmo weekly package, Osmo Plus Premium, get 50% off with the promo code EARLYBIRD. One word here from the podcast name gets you 50% off that weekly access to the Premium Plus package. And that gets you everything. You can add on the optimizer on top of that. So let's talk power forward. Up next, obviously, we have Giannis, AD, both Q at the top, and that is make or break on the slate when it comes to power forward. If we both are out for one reason or another, I can't imagine AD is going to be out. I think this is just sort of the constant Q tag for Anthony Davis. Giannis, a little bit more, skeptical about whether or not he plays. But if all of a sudden Pascal Siakam is our top price power forward at 8,200, it changes the way this position really breaks down. You have Siakam, Ingram, Zion is 7K. Porzingis is at 6,800, would seem to be in a great spot here against Houston with Luka off the floor. But let me ask you that. You mentioned already usage and the like for Hardaway and for Brunson. Is Porzingis in a better spot with Luka out of the lineup? Is he somebody who actually benefits from his point guard being off the floor and the facilitator not being out there?
He's got to be. I mean, I see what you're saying, and there are times, no question, where certain players are ill-affected by that, and and not really. So okay, so let's see. I'm going to pull this up right now. Let me give you guys some good stuff here. So we'll take a look at Porzingis field goals this season that have been assisted. So let's see. Assisted field goals, 165 out of 203. Wow. Okay. So 165 of 203 have been assisted. That's a good amount. He's a big, so it makes sense. Assisted by Doncic. Okay. So that's not that crazy. 64 have been assisted by Doncic. So of his assisted field goals, you have, of his assisted field goals, 39%. That's a lot, but I think Brunson can still get him the ball. He has 25 of those assists, and I don't. DeLon Wright has 15. I don't honestly see it being a huge deal. If anything, it's got to benefit him. And honestly, dude, let's just take a look at the numbers. 1.3 DraftKings points per minute with him off the floor this year. 29% usage, 17% rebounding, and 11% assists with Doncic on the floor this year. And while I look this up, keep in mind, Dan, Doncic is also their best rebounder. So this benefits guys like Porzingis as well, taking your top rebounder off the floor. With Doncic on the floor this season, 762 minutes, 24% usage, 0.98 fantasy points per minute, and a 14% rebound rate. His assist rate is 11% without Doncic, 5.8 with him. So yes, he is undoubtedly going to benefit from this. The hope, though, is that they don't get blown out too soon,
right?
And then he's just off the floor. But also, by the way, it's more so what's going on with the playing time. Since returning, he's played 27, then 25, 25, 26, and 20. His price is low enough where I'm definitely willing to roll the dice and say, hey, if this game's even somewhat competitive, one, it's probably going to have a lot to do with him. And two, Carlisle's going to say, I'm going to leave him out there. So if he's projected for like 26 minutes and ownership is coming in super low, then yeah, I think it makes sense to get to some Kristaps Porzingis. I also think Brandon Clark is interesting. We talk about guys like Solomon Hill and Crowder and Kyle Anderson. Those really aren't guys that you're looking to play, right? They're not going to give you much at all. And I know that Solomon Hill was Jaren Jackson's direct replacement last game. Totally understood. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's just going to swoop in and get the start and play 30 minutes. It's not the craziest idea to think Brandon Clark, who backed up exclusively Jonas Valanciunas last game, actually played a few minutes with him in the fourth quarter. It's not crazy to think that he could get those opportunities. And here's something that kind of speaks to that. The closing lineup, Dan, was John Morant, Dylan Brooks, Kyle Anderson, Jaren Jackson, and Brandon Clark. So that's kind of interesting that Clark was on the floor, and a couple of those minutes came with Joe Val. So if I'm going any value there, it's Brandon Clark over anybody else in that Memphis front court.
All right. Anybody else worthwhile at power forward, or ready to talk centers and close it out?
You got anyone else at the position? I mean, don't. Zion, depending on where he's priced, is probably pretty interesting. But, yeah, it's not a spot that I love. Are you on Anthony Davis? Do you have interest there, or is it just not worth it to you?
Anytime AD is sub 10K?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I think he's worthwhile. I think the ceiling is as high as anybody else on this slate. And he's sub 10K against a Portland team that has trouble with rebounding at times, trouble with opposing big men. I'm fine with AD here. I think the ownership, if he's sub 10%, which I doubt he will be on a 7-game slate if he's playing, but late game, questionable tag, I'll roll the dice there without any question, to be quite honest.
All right. Listen, I have no issues with it. Man, it's the question is like, how many of these top priced guys can we play? Because
sure,
Harden and Westbrook, normally they'd be phenomenal players, and they still are. But then you have LeBron with all of the reasons we discussed before at 300 less than Harden, 200 less than Westbrook. Then you have Lillard, who is literally this not hyperbole, 70 plus fantasy points in 4 straight, 92, 70, 84, 71. Unreal production we're getting from Lillard recently. Extreme efficiency. Everything he's doing is great. And then Anthony Davis at 9,600. Dude, it's definitely tough.
Yep. Makes sense. And how you're constructing these lineups and piecing it together is really how this game is played. So I have no issue with AD, but I hear you on the other pieces. Let's talk centers and be done. Jokic, Drummond, Whiteside, DeAndre Ayton, you have Clint Capella, Serge Ibaka continues to get some big minutes. Jonas Valanciunas gets New Orleans, who struggled at the center spot at times this year. Jarrett Allen against Chicago, which is another prime spot. He's just 6,100. So centers yielding some pretty big names in some pretty good spots. What do you got as some of your favorite plays here?
So we talked about Brandon Clark. I have no issues there. I don't know if I want to play him alongside Joe Val, like in the same lineups, but it just comes down to, do you think these guys will play alongside each other? If your answer to that is yes, then you should have no problem, honestly, playing both of them, because Valanciunas is 6,300. And I don't know about you, Dan, but that just seems like it's too cheap. On the season, they've played 202 minutes together. So okay. So that's not terrible given the circumstances, and considering I don't think Jaren Jackson, has he missed a game? I feel like he hasn't even missed a game. Oh yeah, he missed one game earlier in the year, but it was so early in the season that I don't know if that has much effect. So early in the year he missed, and Brandon Clark started alongside Valanciunas. This game was a 7-point game. Oddly, Valanciunas and Clark played 24 and 20 minutes respectively, but Morant played 28, Crowder 29. Definitely went to the bench early. But, I mean, I doubt Bruno Caboclo is playing 24
Right.
minutes. That seems insane to me, especially because he's not going to be active. He's out. Yeah, I think Clark has to be in play here.
All right.
I think you can play him with Joval. Sorry.
No, that makes sense. I think is a good clarification as well. Any centers beyond Clark, Valanciunas that you want to talk about before we close it out?
Well, I'll ask you, where are you at on guys like Drummond and Jokic? Because for me personally, right now, I think based on all of the discussion with these expensive guys at 95 plus 100, it's going to be tough for me to get to either of them.
Yeah, I think of all of the expensive guys, these tend to stay on the lower end of who I want to play. Wondering with the current run on Toronto, trying to do a quick run over here on. That's interesting. Over the past 5 games, which is a minute sample size, Toronto leading in points in the paint for opponents at 37.6, which is impressive with the smaller stature of their front court. But defense is still really good there in Toronto. Drummond can have a huge game. Jokic can have a huge game, but I would say I wouldn't project them in any way over AD, Harden, LeBron, or Westbrook. So pretty easy to say stay away. Obviously, if you're playing MME, ownership matters here, and you can project certain outcomes, range of outcomes where you can make it work. I'd probably make my way to. I'd probably start with an Ayton against Oklahoma City at 8,300, depending on ownership. But I'm probably going to where you're talking about Joval and Jared Allen. I like a lot here against Chicago. They have no one in the front court. He's been playing a decent amount of minutes. He's been playing really above the rim, getting a lot of rebounds, putbacks, and alley-oops. So Jared Allen at 6,100 is somebody that I wouldn't be shying away from to play on this slate.
I'll actually go on the other side of that. I don't – there's no way you can play these two guys together, Jared Allen and DeAndre Jordan. But DeAndre Jordan's $4,300, and it's very possible that he comes in and does play 24 minutes in this one. If that's the case, I'm not opposed to at least giving him a look. On the season, he's a 1.23 DraftKings point per minute guy. So very, very impressive overall production. If he comes out here and does give you 24 minutes or so, it makes him a very interesting play. Look, I don't expect it. He probably gets 20 to Allen's 28, but we've seen it plenty of times where Jordan does get split minutes, plays 24 minutes, and ends up being a pretty solid value option. Whiteside, probably don't get there. I guess the big one here is, what do we do with Serge Ibaka? Ayton scares me against OKC. We talked about Porzingis. I like Jonas Valanciunas. I think he's just way too cheap. With Jaren Jackson off the floor, it does nothing but bolster that. What do we do with Ibaka playing a second of a back-to-back? Let's go ahead and assume that Marc Gasol is out. I could be wrong. Maybe he'll play. I feel like he probably doesn't. Those hamstring injuries seem to last at least a little while. And Ibaka played 33 minutes tonight. So for Friday, I don't know. Do we get another 33 minutes? Nick Nurse is more than willing to run his starters into the ground when need be.
Anybody from Chicago worthwhile against the Nets? Whether Gafford, I know he's doubtful, but Cornette or Felicio or anybody? No. Okay.
You just can't, especially if Gafford comes back. Like, that makes it. It's just it's not a pretty situation there at all. I think we hit on the centers that look the most appealing. I guess we could say that Clint Capella is below 8K, but again, man, with the mid range and the top tier value, I think at least it's shaping up to be a stars and scrubs type of night. And I'd be very surprised if you wanted to take any other direction.
All right, let's go 9,500 and above. AD, Dame, LeBron, Russell Westbrook, Harden, and Giannis. We know Doncic is out. Let's assume Giannis is in at 11.7. Again, 95 and above, leaving Jokic and Drummond on the other side of this. AD, Lillard, James, Westbrook, Harden, and Giannis, who do you have as a building block for your lineup construction on Friday night?
It's an incredibly tough question. And then I'll ask the same of you before we close it out. I'm going LeBron James. the thing is, narrative only takes you so far. Like if AD's out, you don't need any of that. I still love Harden or LeBron James in this matchup anyway against Portland. So I'm gonna go LeBron James, and then honestly, I think I just want some nice combination of Westbrook, Lillard, and Harden. I really like all of them.
Yeah, I think I'm with you with LeBron. I think if AD is out, then it's an easy lock and load. But I think then it becomes the ownership game. I think it's just figuring out who has the lower ownership. Obviously, Osmo.com has ownership projections, but if you get Harden, 20% less owned than Westbrook because of recency bias, I'll take the upside of Harden. I get that he hasn't been great of late, but I think then you start to play from there. But LeBron's where I start, not because of the narrative. I think the matchup, and if AD is out, then it's a pretty straightforward approach to that one. You find Dave on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. You find him on Sirius 210 XM87 every Saturday and Sunday. This weekend, just on Saturday. Sunday is a small little football game that some people will be watching, so you will not hear from Dave therein. But Sirius 210 XM87, check that out. Check out SiriusXM.com if you want to try to get a free subscription. They're typically giving away, in some way, shape, or form, some sort of free listen or ways to listen into different channels. So check that out. Find me on Twitter if you so choose, at Dan Strafford. And then Osmo_com is, of course, our website's Twitter handle. Check them out. Grown at the bad tweets, like the good tweets. We appreciate that. As always, with that said, you can check out no, there isn't a podcast tomorrow morning. Next podcast is Monday morning. It's EMAC. It is Chris Rendon right here on the DFS Early Bird, presented by Osmo.com.